more than 20 million egg-laying chickens in the United States died last quarter because of bird flu. At least 66 human cases have been reported in the U.S., according to a report published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Joining us from Mitchell, South Dakota, is Dr. Jim Keane, Director of Veterinary Science for the Center for a Humane Economy. Dr. Keane, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you describe for us the ongoing bird flu outbreak right now? Is this a cause for concern?
Yes, it's a concern on many levels, and thank you for letting me be here, speak with your audience. We have multiple problems. One is we have about 130 million birds have been killed because of bird flu in the U.S. Most of those are egg layers, and that has caused a $2 per dozen increase in price, which means for consumers in the U.S. about $15 billion more for eggs compared to before the bird flu. It's also infected about 1 million cows in the U.S., about 950 herds. And it's also infected millions of wild birds and thousands of wild mammals, especially animals that eat dead birds. So it's multi-levels. The biggest concern is that it will jump from birds to people and at a wider scale.
So clearly, bird flu is not just a bird disease. It affects other animals. And you mentioned humans. Talk to us about how concerning it is for humans, the way it is spreading right now. How much of an alarm is it important to raise?
Well, it's definitely, I don't want to be a disease monger, but it's definitely a risk. You know, the virus keeps mutating. That's the problem. When it started out in Southeast Asia, in the early 2000s, it killed about half the people, about 900 people have been infected, about half of those died. Now, we have not seen, the virus is not the same as it was then because it keeps changing, but there's always the potential that it could become more transmissible among people or more virulent among people. And a lot of people, it's a potential pandemic. It's not there yet, but the more animals that are infected, the more people that will become infected, and the more likely it is to become a serious disease problem in people.
What are the means of transmission? Is it by contact with infected birds? One of the reports that you published, you talked about cockfighting as one activity that poses threat of infection. How much of a problem is that?
Yes, basically, as of right now, and this has been for the bird flu around the world, it's only transmitted to people through intimate contact with an infected animal. And with cockfighting, as a lot of people know, it's a very intimate contact between the fighting birds and people. So in the U.S., we don't know how much contact has contributed, but we know that of the 66 human cases, about 40 of those have come from contact with infected cattle, and about 20 have come from contact with infected people. So right now, the risk is people who have close contact and with infected animals, and cockfighting is one means where you can have close contact with infected animals.
What strategies can be effective to prevent this to spread further within the United States and abroad?
Well, it's been problematic. This virus has been spreading for since the late 1990s out of Asia, spread around the world. It's everywhere except Australia. U.S. policy is it's considered a foreign animal disease in the U.S., so the USDA policy has been to kill everything. That is not working. So I think the USDA and the U.S. government and the poultry industry are considering vaccinating for the first time. It's never been tried in the U.S., but I think we're at a point in time where that approach needs to be tried.
When you look at the threat globally, why should a continent like Africa, for example, why should it be concerned, and what kind of measures can countries take to prevent this from entering within their borders?
Well, I know within Africa in the past there were bird flu outbreaks, of course, among birds throughout Africa, but there were several human infections in Egypt and in Nigeria. I'm not sure when the most. So there's sporadic cases. It's not epidemic. They're sporadic in people, but the disease has definitely occurred, killing poultry and occasionally infecting and occasionally killing people within the African continent. So the whole world really needs to be concerned about this. It's not just because it's spread by migratory birds. The birds spread it everywhere, so everybody has some degree of concern. the U.S. has a responsibility, I think, since the outbreak is biggest here, to do something about it.